Assalamu alaikum dear viewers and welcome to Women's View on Ahlulbayt TV. You're watching Women's View live on Ahlulbayt TV. Now the topic of today's discussion is the practical lessons we can gain from the women of Karbala. Now often during the first 10 days of Muharram we are presented with sacrifices and attributes of the male individuals who were present in Karbala. For example, the sacrifices and contribution of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam, Ali al-Akbar, Qasim, Habib ibn Madahir, Zuhair ibn al-Qayn, Hul, and the likes of these individuals. But it's after the Ashura, after the 10th of Muharram, where the true message of Islam was entrusted in the hands of women, and the true role of women came into place. Now, inshallah, in today's discussion, we want to discuss the practical lessons we can gain from the women of Karbala. And not just us as women, as we know there are male views as well, us as individuals. What are the lessons we can gain from the women of Karbala? Now, often men and women, they look upon current celebrities as inspiration or people to follow. But the real question is, how do we present the women of Karbala as practical examples in our generation today, in everyday life? Now, as always, as you know, that this is a live call-in show, so if you would like to call in with your views or opinions, then please do call in with the number on the screen. We would love to hear from you. Alternatively, you can email us at womensview@ahlulbayt.tv. That's womensview@ahlulbayt.tv. Or you can tweet me, Zahra Al-Alawi, or tweet Ahlulbayt TV. Or you can post any comments on Facebook. Inshallah, I'll try to read out as much comments as possible. So as we said, today's topic is the practical lessons we can gain from the women of Karbala. I'm your host, Zahra Al-Alawi, and today is the long and awaited appearance of Hajjia Najah Bazzy. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
It's such a pleasure. It's honestly a pleasure to have you on the show. We've been waiting for you for years to come on. So
it's really my honor to be here, and I'm very happy.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you so much. This discussion is such a beautiful discussion because many people, they look for inspiration, they look for guidance or people to follow. And just as briefly, because you know we have non-Muslim viewers who watch the channel, we have Muslims from other schools of thought who watch the channel. So I was just as a brief to open up the discussion, could you just briefly introduce to us some of the women who were present in the Battle of Karbala?
Sure, certainly I can do that. Obviously, and I think most known to everyone is Lady Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam and her role. I think Layla, the role of Layla, the role of the children, Fatima, Ruqayya, Sukaina. I think that the role of Rabab, these are several women who I think, inshallah, we can have a discussion if you'd like to, one by one, or in the discussion, their names will come up in the ways that they, I think, have inspired us, or in the ways that they continue to give us strength, not just inspiration, but really courage, I think is a really critical word here. But I agree that in these days, we must really reflect on the role of women and the strength and the courage of these women and the eloquence of Sayyida Zainab and how she is able to use her, I suppose we could call it, her courage under fire, and literally, courage under fire, to be able to maintain the role that she had to and the burden that she had to carry. And history has written her story, and this powerful woman ended a dynasty of rule. And how often do we see that in human history? So I think there's much to discuss today.
Definitely, yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam, a woman, because in this generation we feel like the hijab stops us when we see that she gave such eloquence, intellectual speech while being covered from head to toe, which shows that there's nothing that can stop us. So inshallah, like you said, we'll mention these later on. I was talking to you before the break about just 2 days ago when I was in the mosque. There was a girl, while there was a lecture going on, she was flicking through the magazine, and when I spoke to her after, she was such a beautiful woman, and I hope she's watching today because she was so kind and had the akhlaq. But when I told her, why are you flicking through, it was a 6-page spread of a celebrity, a female celebrity, wearing hardly anything, and tips of how to apply makeup, tips of what to wear, what not to wear while the lecture was going on. So when I approached her, I said, why are you looking at this while the lecture is going on? She said, I don't connect with these women or the lecture. So why do you think current individuals or men and women look up to celebrities for inspiration or look at such individuals for guidance or to imitate? Why do you think that is?
That's a really good question, Sister Zahra. Sometimes my answers may not be the most popular answers, but I think that as you grow in your womanhood and, you know, as a mother and in society, I think wisdom comes along with life. And so I've come to learn that, not meaning any disrespect, but it's much easier to decorate the outside than it is to really hone the inside.
Yeah.
In the examples that we have of Lady Zainab, Layla, Rabab, even the children, the female children of Karbala, the strength that these women had requires a tremendous amount of spiritual exercise. It's much easier to page through a magazine and to apply an eyeshadow or a mascara, to decorate your outside, to do your hair a certain style, to choose a specific type of clothing because it's accessible. It's easy to do the outside. It's much harder to do the inside. And I think when we tell the stories of Karbala and we speak of the pristine character of Lady Zainab, of Fatima Zahra alayhim salam, of these pristine, just courageous, beautiful women who survived their time and excelled in their time, I think that that draws up in the minds of many people. I can never be that. I will never get there. That's great for that, but that doesn't really apply to me. They had a special status with God. God didn't give me that special status, but what God has given me, I can aspire to, you know, a Kim Kardashian or somebody else, and that's something achievable for me. So it's about decorating the outside because that's easily, you can buy it. But to hone it or develop it on the inside, that's work. That's a lot of work. And I think either people don't connect with the story because there's something in them that feels that they're never good enough, or they just think it's too much work.
I think that's a beautiful answer. That's quite true, actually. It's quite easily to decorate your face, wear nice clothes and get the attention, but to actually work on the inside is what, like you said, requires work. Yeah.
I think the more we develop the inside, I'm sure the outside matters much less. And this is one of the things that I really try to get young girls to understand, especially. I mean, you know, I may be in my 50s now, but I mean, at one time, we have to remember that all of us were 16 and 18, and we were in our teens, and so we understand a lot of those feelings. But the reality of it is the more that inside, it's an inside out as opposed to the outside in. And that's really where the true happiness is. And that is achievable, even as it's developed in younger women, I think.
So, as you work, I'm sure you work with lots and lots of people. How do you make them realize this? Because I think it's very hard when you look at younger individuals or younger men and women, it's quite hard to them to actually comprehend or understand that it's the inside that matters. This materialistic stuff doesn't matter. And how can you make these individuals of the household of the Holy Prophet actually practical role models for them? How do you work around this?
Well, I think their stories are important. I think they're stories of courage. I think that they give us, how will I say it? They kind of give us a mantle and a standard of high morality. And so, for example, when we're grieving, it's easy to think about your grief and couch it in the grief of Zainab, alayhi salam, and then realize that your grief, even if you were to have lost your parents or if you were to have lost a child, in Karbala, there's a story for everything in our lives, right? There is a story for every single event in life. So when you think about Zainab and you hear her stories, and you're able to use her strength to couch your own grief. So in that way, she gives you an example. The question I think that we have to understand is, could we look at their daily lives? Not just the events, and find ways to connect to them in their daily lives, not just, you know, the horrific tragedy, which of course was so horrific, the climax of her personality and her strength and her courage. But she also lived a daily life. And what was her life before Karbala? What was her life after Karbala? How was she as a mother? How was she as, we know how she was as a sister. What kinds of lessons can we learn from her that we can apply to our daily life? And from her mother, alayhi salam, from Khadija, and from these great women of Islam. So how do you get, your question is, how do you get young people to see that? And I think we have to tell more of their everyday stories. That we have to see them as both, I call sheroes, not heroes, because, you know, we have this, alhamdulillah, this is a big blessing in Islam, by the way.
Alhamdulillah, yeah.
It really is. I mean, of all of the world faiths, there is not a faith that has sheroes, as I call them, not just heroes, as does Islam. So that this is a blessing to us. But I think that we have to, I think we have to connect. I think that's really what I want to say, that we have to connect them in an everyday, practical way. Otherwise, they're up here, which they deserve to be, but unless it's a major life event, you may not see them. You may connect with them only in those moments, you know?
Yeah.
But how do you connect with them in the everyday? And I think that I think about them constantly, consistently. They give me strength every day. I try to think, what did they think? How did they move? What did they say? When did they take the public sphere? How were they? And I think the other thing is that we always couch them or characterize them only in grief. But I'm sure that there were also other moments that could have been happy moments, life moments. I mean, imagine if Fatima Zahra alayhi salam was your mother and Imam Ali was your father. I would be a happy child. So what was life like? And what was the household like? What was being raised by parents like that? What was that like? And I don't think we tell enough of those stories.
Yeah.
So I think it makes it harder to connect.
Definitely, yeah. Like you said, I think we always put the emphasis on their role in the Battle of Karbala, or their role in the tribulations that they went through, but we don't hear much about their everyday life. And I think that's why I agree with you, that's why there's a sense of disconnect, because we don't know much about their everyday life, the way they behaved. And I think, like you said, we need to. What can we do to emphasize more on their everyday life? I mean, lectures. What other ways could we actually make them practical? What ways, like, for example, individuals like yourself, other individuals who have a role in society and are active within society, how can they make these individuals practical in the lives of youngsters, or anyone, life of men and women?
I don't know. I think it's about learning. I think it's about respecting a moral tradition and wanting to really aspire to a moral tradition. I think it's about looking for stability and balance. Like when you look at those kinds of everyday things that we all need stability, we all need balance, we all need moderation, we all need happiness, we all need a nuclear family. See, they had all of these things. And if it was the perfect man, which Rasulullah ﷺ is the perfect man, we believe that he raised the most perfect family, then I would expect that perfect family to be an example.
Yeah.
And I understand why we have to speak of the tragedies, of course, because this is part of our human history. Not our Shia history, by the way. It's part of human history. And I hope that our viewers understand that this was perhaps the most traumatic, most a calamity above all calamities in human history. What happened in Karbala is something that the world needs to know about. It's something that we must communicate. We must learn to communicate it in different ways, not just in our majalis. We need to take the message out. This is a message of social justice. It's a message of human injustice. It's a message of tyranny. It's a message of superiority. There's so many different messages in the story. So I think that is another piece of that we have to focus on. How do we tell the story in ways that other people can hear them? But I think the practicality, the practical point is coming to learn about them, and coming to embrace them, like really in your heart. And they're always there for us. This is the thing that life has taught me. In every event in life, you will find a member of Ahlulbayt to associate with. This is their gift to us. Don't you think so?
Yeah, definitely. I think I connect with everything you're saying. I feel the same as well, you know, in every single aspect of the life, there's always a member of the Ahlulbayt that you can just really connect with in that situation, which is beautiful. We are getting some emails coming through, so if you don't mind, I'll read some of them out. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Zahra and Sister Najah Bazzy. It's great to see Sister Najah on the show.
Thank you.
I had a question. Thank you so much. I had a question for Sister Najah. I, as an individual, feel that we are faced with different situations. We live in a different generation, and we are faced with different obstacles than the Ahlulbayt. It seems like they lived in a completely different generation which doesn't have no connection or relevance to our life. So how can we really take them as role models or inspiration when they are from a completely different generation? Brother Muhammad.
You know, Brother Muhammad, I would say that it is true they are from a different time, but I'm not so sure that they're from a different generation. I think that young people, even myself in my younger years, you think that you're not understood. And sometimes we're not, as young people, understood. And I do not deny that there's differences in surroundings, generation to generation. But when you look at the lifespan of people in their lifespan are going to experience similar things. As children around the world, regardless of culture, regardless of environment, a human being in this age span are going to experience similar feelings, similar things, similar thought processes. A child in their adolescence to teens, it doesn't matter where they are in the world, it doesn't matter what culture they have come from, it doesn't matter what generation, from the beginning of human time, children in this generation, from their teens to this, they're going to experience. So the stages of life, I think, is where we can find relevance. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm not so sure that it's about that time in this time. I think it's about all of time. And so, for example, if I'm to say then to my children or my grandchildren that they can't relate to me because I'm 2 generations ahead of them, when I'm born and raised perhaps in the same country, when I've gone through the same things that they've gone through, of course I can relate to them. It's true, times may have changed. That's true, but I think that there are core values and core experiences in life that transcend generations. I really believe that. Now, I'm not saying we're always good at communicating backward. That's, I think, sometimes a problem. Nor could younger people be very effective at communicating forward. That's understandable. But I think that the Ahlulbayt have huge relevance. For example, you know, one of the reasons why I wasn't able to come to Ahlulbayt TV, my father was very sick for many years. And for about 3 very serious years of illness, and so I just took care of him. And Zain al-Abidin, for me, became not just my imam, he was my buddy. Because whenever I needed to really just cry my heart out, or whenever I was even feeling sorry for myself, or pity, or something like that, I would think of Imam Zain al-Abidin. And I would think, now, this is a man who had to watch what he watched and see what he saw, and he still stood and managed to keep the family together and to carry on and to live, even after his father died. And there was days where I thought, I will not survive my father's death. I'm going to fall apart because I missed him so much. Yeah. And so, there's how many years between Imam Zain al-Abidin and myself? 1,400 years. But I could still feel that he was a friend because I understood his story. And I know he understood mine. Right? Yeah. So that's where I'm saying that whether it is Ahlulbayt or the Prophets, alayhim as-salam ajma'een, or we can connect with people. It's just we have to see that they were human and they were real people. And I think that sometimes that's where we disconnect, is we don't see them as people like ourselves. Now, they may have had special traits, no doubt. But everybody has special traits. Their traits were of a special kind, right? But that doesn't mean that they couldn't feel. I mean, they cried and they laughed and they were sad and they had all the emotions we did.
Definitely. I think your words are really touching, and it really shows us that it doesn't matter if there's difference in generations. There is a connection there, and there's always a story or a situation you can always go back and relate to them. I think that's beautiful. We are already past, we are due to a break, so inshallah we'll go for a break. Inshallah we'll be back. For the audience watching at home, you're watching Women's View live on Ahlulbayt TV. We have Sister Najah Bazzy on the show, and today's topic is the practical lessons we can gain from the women of Karbala. So I know there's more emails and tweets coming through, so inshallah I'll read them out after the break. Do remember the lines are still opened, and inshallah I will be reading all your comments out for those who wish to participate in the show. We'll be back in a few minutes, inshallah, where we carry on the topic of the practical lessons we gain from the women of Karbala. So see you in a few minutes. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.